how to travel, how to plan an epic adventure. What up, YouTube? It's your boy Jermaine, back with another video. This video, want to respond to a comment that was left on a travel video. This travel video is my experience traveling in Southeast Asia. I'll link the video up above here. And yeah, the comment was, please do a video on how to plan a trip like this. I am saving up to travel the world, but I get so overwhelmed about the logistics, almost come close to reaching my savings goal. So I think I have an idea of what this subscriber is talking about. I went from country to country to country, and yeah, okay, the logistics on that. Okay, so first off, let's just talk about how I plan a trip, and I'm gonna use this past trip I just got back from. I'll give you guys all the breakdown, all the info, and how I pull this one off, and you can just use my example as a reference of how you would do something like this. So pretty much on this trip, I really wanted to book a one-way trip going to Asia. Instead, I booked a round-trip ticket because the one-way tickets were like $400, and if I would have just got a round-trip ticket, it would have been like $520. So I paid $520 for a round-trip ticket from San Francisco to Hong Kong. Used Google Flights to find this deal, and it worked out really, really good. I had a month in Hong Kong, but of course I'm not going to stay in Hong Kong the whole month. I'm going to travel around Southeast Asia, so that means that I just need to return back to Hong Kong to catch my flight leaving. Now, that flight that I took, the Hong Kong flight, the flight from San Francisco to Hong Kong, I call that the gateway flight. This is the flight that gets me like from North America to the next continent, okay? The next continent being Asia. Once I get over in Asia, I can use budget airlines to fly pretty much all around Asia, and I can also use a few budget airlines to fly out of Asia to a place like Europe, or possibly to Australia, which is another continent. So that's how you pull that off. And when I was booking my flight, I was online looking at Google Flights, and I was looking at flights going from Hong Kong to Bangkok, looking at flights going from Hong Kong to Singapore, looking at flights going from Hong Kong to Bali, looking at flights going from Hong Kong to Kuala Lumpur. Pretty much what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to plan out a route before I even book the first flight. I'm trying to plan out a route that works, like the timing works and the pricing works, more importantly, because when you're budget traveling, you're trying to keep everything low so you can do more. The less money you spend, the more money you save, the more money that you could spend on something else. And if you continue to do that on the cheap, you can do that a little bit more too. So that's the name of the game here, is not to blow money, to literally try to take $1,000 and try to really, really, really stretch it out. When I'm going through all these different flights, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the cheapest route. Okay, so I know for sure I want to go to Hong Kong because I'm definitely going to Hong Kong because I'm going to book that gateway flight to Hong Kong. But then I'm going to look at places from Hong Kong, and then I'm also going to look at places leaving Hong Kong and then also leaving that place. I'm going to plan out this chain that's going to work out. So in the case of this trip, I was looking at flights from Hong Kong to Singapore, and the flights from Hong Kong to Singapore were pretty dang reasonable. And then flights from Singapore to Bali was, right down my alley once again. And then flights from Bali to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, were right down my alley. However, in my case, I did not book all these flights before I left the US. Now, this may be something that you guys want to do, especially if you're a first-time traveler. You might want to book out all of your flights. If you do this, you can actually save money. In my case, I didn't book this because I didn't know when I went to Asia, I didn't do this because when I flew to Hong Kong, I just had a flight going to Singapore. So if I was in the airport and, the customs agent asked me, do you have a flight leaving? I can show, well, I have this flight leaving going to Singapore. And then I'm all good. Right before I go to the airport to catch that flight leaving Hong Kong to go to Singapore, I need to make sure I buy another flight leaving the next country I'm going to. So in this example, I need to have another flight leaving Singapore going to Bali or going to wherever I'm going. In this case, I had a flight leaving from Singapore going to Bali, and when I went through customs, they asked to see my exit flight, and it worked out great because I had already had an exit flight, and that's the rule of thumb I use when I travel and I'm just going from country to country to country. I typically buy flights like right before I arrive to the country, or if it's a certain occasion, maybe I'll have it planned out maybe 2-3 weeks in advance. If you do book on budget airlines 2 to 3 weeks in advance, you can save more money. I mean, you can save like almost 50% in some cases. 50% on a budget airlines is, let me give you an example. My flight leaving from Chiang Mai, Thailand, going to Hong Kong, I believe I paid like $120 for that flight. If I would have booked that flight 2 weeks in advance, I would have got that flight for $60. That means I would have got that flight for half price. I really wasn't complaining because for $120, it was still a good deal for me because it's still a good deal. I'm used to paying a lot more on flights in the U.S. So, yeah, I still thought it was somewhat of a good deal. But if you do plan out your trip, you can save a ton of money. Places where I stay. Now, usually I'm not like the type of guy that just goes and stay at a 5-star resort. I'm a basic budget backpacker traveler. And it's the same rule of thumb. A lot of times I will look at hostels like weeks before I go to a place. Like if I know I'm going to go to this city, or if I know I'm going to go to this city, or if I think I'm going to go to this city. Because on this trip, I actually plan to go to Vietnam on this trip. I also plan to stay in Vietnam for 3 weeks. But at the last minute, once I arrived to Hong Kong and had the flight going to Singapore, because I was going to fly from Singapore over to Vietnam, I just had a change of plans, and instead I just ended up traveling to Bali, which was my first time traveling below the equator. Yay! And if you guys are curious, does the water go the opposite way in the toilet? Well, I didn't notice that because all the toilets that I remember using there, the water just like went like straight down. Like it's really weird, but the water just went like straight down. It wasn't a swirl, so. Yeah, I didn't notice that, but I also have plans on going below the equator later this year again, so maybe I'll have another opportunity to test that out. But I really want to know if the water goes the other way. I really want to know if the water goes the other way. When I stay in hostels, where do I find the hostels? Well, it's pretty simple. I typically just use Hostel World. If it's a place I've been to before, for example, Amsterdam, Bangkok, Paris, typically I will stay in the same place that I've stayed in before if I really like that place. I probably won't stay at the same place in Paris because I just had a negative experience the last time I was in Paris, but I've also been to Paris about 5 times and I've had really good experiences before, but this last trip was it was really, really different. Maybe I shouldn't just put a big red X on Paris, but yeah, hostelworld.com, it's really, really easy to book hostels and book places to stay. You can download their app. Once you download their app, you can log in, just like most apps have like the login deal, and it just kind of works like hotels.com. Like you look for places, you book places, you leave reviews, there's ratings. Reading reviews can be very, very beneficial on Hostel World because some places are better than other places. Now you may wonder, have I ever like booked the hostel and I showed up and I just didn't really, really like it? Like honestly, that's never really happened. I've never showed up to a place and felt like I should leave. I have stayed in some pretty weird places. Like for example, in Costa Rica. This is San Jose, Costa Rica. This is the first time I went to San Jose. This is the first time I went to Costa Rica, by the way. But I'm staying at this hostel, and the taxi driver just pulls up and he just drops us off. And it's like this. It's like this street that was really busy in the daytime, and they closed the doors on all the businesses. And we get dropped off, and there's this little small like call box, and the name of the hostel's there written really small, and we walk up and press the button, and they open this door, and when they opened this door, we walked in, and they had like cars parked downstairs, and then you walk back towards the back, you go upstairs, and it was just like this really, really cool hostel. Like it was a really, really cool place. But when I got out of that taxi, I was crapping bullets, man. I was thinking, yo, like, did they just drop us off in the middle of some alleyway? We about to get robbed or something? Like, I was actually somewhat terrified. and then everything was totally, everything was totally cool. Like it was, everything was totally fun. It was nothing. Yeah, I actually had a really, really good experience there. And whenever I go back to San Jose, I probably will stay at that same place again. For the most part, I don't plan out a trip like A through Z. When I leave the U.S., sometimes I don't exactly know what other countries I'm going to go to. I may have an idea, or I may say, oh, yeah, I really want to go to this country, or I really want to go here. But if I'm going to be moving around, sometimes I just don't know. Sometimes I'll just go with the flow. If I show up to one particular place and I like it a lot and I want to stay there longer, I'll just stay there longer. Like when I showed up to Israel and I planned to stay in Israel for 1 week, and I ended up staying for a month, and I had a blast there. I may not would have had such a great time if I would have left in a week. So I just had the flexibility to stay for a little bit longer. Or in other cases, like Chiang Mai, Thailand, I really, really like Chiang Mai, Thailand. I think I'll just return back to Chiang Mai, Thailand and just stay for a little bit longer. Let's say you know for sure you have 2 weeks off and you want to plan a trip, and you know that you want to go to London, you want to go to Paris, you want to go to Barcelona. You only have 2 weeks. It's going to take roughly a day to get there if you are, let's say you're flying from California. We're going to use this example of you're going to lose roughly a day going there and a day coming back. So roughly you'll have 12 days there. Now in this case, you got a lot of options. You could book a round trip flight from, let's say you're flying from Los Angeles to Barcelona. Your round trip flight will be from Los Angeles to Barcelona. Then from there, you could take a flight from Barcelona to the UK, okay, on a budget airlines. And if you're doing this in advance, it's going to be cheaper. And then from there, you can book another flight from London going to Paris. Now you also have options. If you don't want to take a flight, you don't have to take a flight. You can take a bus, you can take a train, you could probably hitchhike if you wanted to. So you have other options. And then once you get to Paris, the same thing. You can just book a flight going from Paris to Barcelona, or you can take a train, you can take a bus. I'm sure you can hitchhike. So you definitely have options. If you want, you could probably ride a bike. And then once you get back to Barcelona, you can take your flight going back to LA. That's just one example. If you know that you have a month off, and let's say you want to be really spontaneous, you can kind of just book like a one-way flight going to Europe, travel around and figure out where you wind up. And let's use this example. When I'm traveling in Europe, Barcelona is the cheapest city for me to get back to the Bay Area. It's the cheapest city. Now, it's not the only city. There's other cities I can fly from, Rome, Paris, Berlin, but some cities cost more than others because of budget airlines. Certain budget airlines fly out of certain cities, and other cities budget airlines don't fly out of, or the pricing could be more expensive. So in my case, I figured out the airports that Norwegian Airlines fly to and WOW Airlines are probably going to be my best bet. You can use that option too. Or if you really want to get spontaneous, just do what I did earlier this year. Just book a one-way flight leaving the U.S. and just book a one-way flight, like just going to the Middle East, and then just work your way back. So I just made my way back towards Spain. So after I left Israel, I flew over to Amsterdam, spent a couple of days in Amsterdam, and then went down, and then just kept traveling down to, I got to Spain, and it worked out. I planned the days out, just enough time to stay in each place. I traveled through Belgium, stayed in Paris for another night, and ended up staying in Barcelona for 4 nights. You got a whole lot of options, and you got a whole lot of tricks to plan out your itinerary. Some ways work better for different people. If you have a job, maybe you can't just, go roaming for a month. Now, on the other hand, you could book a flight from San Francisco to London and stay for a week, and then just fly back, and then book another flight and stay for a week somewhere else and fly back. But if you don't want to do all that flying, it might work out. Just take one flight, see 4 or 5 different places, 6, 7 different places if you can. It really depends on what region of the world you're in, because if you're in Europe, countries are smaller, countries are closer together, and countries are easier to get to. If you're traveling in places like Africa, the countries are bigger, there's less budget airlines, and it just takes a little bit longer to travel through countries. So anyway, I just want to make a video just talking about how to travel, how to plan an epic adventure, how to plan a trip, because it can be very overwhelming. Like it can be overwhelming for me. A lot of times I'll just cut the computer off and walk away and then just look later, because it's just it's just too much sometimes. Like it's just too much sometimes. But anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching. If you're new to my channel and if you watch to the end, because this is a freaking long video, let me know. Let me know in the comments below to the end. Thanks a lot for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and peace out.